Welcome to a very special episode of Cold Justice. I'm John Walsh. As a victims' rights advocate myself, I instantly became a big fan of this show. I followed along for 2 seasons as this innovative program has captivated audiences with a look behind the scenes and inside the investigations of cold case homicides. Prosecutor Kelly Siegler and crime scene investigator Yolanda McCleary have teamed up with some renowned detectives and local law enforcement to solve cases in real time that many believe unsolvable, and with great success. Tonight, I'm as excited as you are to get updates on a number of cases from the series.
He's now housed at the Texas Department of Corrections.
Where does the case against Clint Mackey stand right now? I'll also ask the questions that you, the show's loyal viewers, have posed to the Cold Justice investigative team. Stay with me for Cold Justice, Justice Served. First up, I'd like to introduce the backbone of the Cold Justice team, Kelly Siegler and Yolanda McCleary.
Good to see you again.
Always great to see you.
John.
Now, the impact Cold Justice has had on law enforcement agencies, victims, loved ones, it's really remarkable. Did either of you guys imagine that this show would take off like this?
I did, because a lot of people don't know the real world of cold cases, and I think that we've been able to show people the hard work that goes into it and the fact that they really can get solved.
It is hard work, isn't it, Yolanda?
Oh, I mean, you're literally ripping these cases apart and rebuilding them from the ground level all the way back up, as if they had never been worked before.
That hard work hasn't gone unnoticed by the viewers, and you have a lot of diehard fans. So tonight I'm going to ask you questions that have been sent in by fans. One important question, which I'm curious about myself, is how did you two get together?
It's kind of odd because I know everybody thinks we've been working together for years, but believe it or not, the show brought us together. We actually never worked together prior.
And I think it's surprising because everybody knows that Bling Bling over here is from Vegas, and we're teaching her how to say y'all and not you guys. She's eating chicken fried steak, and it's all been good.
People could say you're the odd couple, but I say you're a marriage made in heaven. You're really very, very effective. Okay, well, now, the very first case in the very first show investigated on Cold Justice was that of Pam Shelley in the small town of Cuero, Texas. Take a look. In January 2001, Pamela Shelley died from a gunshot wound to the head.
I just hear this horrific scream.
The medical examiner ruled it a suicide.
I just can't let this case go.
Pamela's family and Carl Bowen from the DeWitt County Sheriff's Office always believed she was murdered by her boyfriend, Ronnie.
And he can't just get away with that. It doesn't work like that.
The team was able to eliminate many of the indicators pointing to suicide.
She loved her children so much, I do not believe she would do that.
And establish a possible explanation for the wound and bullet trajectory.
My head goes down.
That's perfect. But it was Ronnie's inconsistent alibi that eventually led to his indictment for murder, where he entered a guilty plea and was sentenced to 22 years in prison.
You told me that you weren't going to ever give up on your mama, and I'm very proud of you.
Homicide investigator Johnny Bonds is joining us, and we have Detective Carl Bowen and Pam Shelley's daughter, Kayla, is here too. Now, Kayla, a viewer named John McCall wants to know, what made you decide to accept the help of an unknown TV show to try to solve your mother's murder?
Well, we had already done all he could do. We were just stuck, and I wasn't ready to give up.
We had exhausted every conventional means that we had available to us. So I felt that it was time to start thinking outside the box.
It turned out to be a good idea, wasn't it?
In hindsight, it was a great idea.
What was it about this case that told you it wasn't right?
From the very beginning, this case just had this whole element of the whole common sense thing, that a person was going to leave an abusive situation, and then after she had all of her belongings packed up and her kids were going to leave, that she would just go into a room and just kill herself. It just didn't make sense.
Never sat right with you, did it?
No, never.
You know, the crime scenes that you guys are visiting are often decades old. As a crime scene investigator, how do you deal with those old crime scenes?
What I have to go by is usually a type of report that the officers have written and some photos. And I literally study like every inch of those photos. In this particular case, it was a bathroom. So I studied every inch of that bathroom, what didn't look right, what was out of place. We also had the autopsy photos that I could look at for the trajectory to try to figure out from the evidence I had in the bathroom to the evidence on my victim, if it was truly a suicide, would all these connect together? And they didn't.
And the very first thing I had a problem with was her wound, and it was a classic suicide wound. It was slightly upward front and slightly toward the rear. So we had to get around that wound. So we're looking at the mirror. She sees a gun coming toward her, and her natural reaction is to get away from that gun. So that explained the classic suicide wound.
So your first case on a brand new show has a good ending. You hit a home run.
Wow.
Carl, what's up with Ronnie today?
Since his conviction, he's now housed at the Texas Department of Corrections for the remainder of his 22-year sentence.
Now, Kayla, another viewer named Annie Patch, wanted to know the answer to this question. Do you think Ronnie's sentence was enough?
He walked free for 12 years. So I just think he deserves what he gets.
What do you think about that sentence?
I think that cold cases are different than other murder cases. And I always told my victims the game here is the conviction.
Right.
And I think that you would say what all victims would say, it's never enough time.
Right.
But in the real world, with all the complications that come with cold cases, beggars can be choosers. Right. And if you can get them sent to prison for any length of time, it's a happy day.
I know it's been a really long, tough journey. How are you doing today?
I'm better today than I think I've been in the past 13 years. Before this, it was like I didn't have hope to do anything. It consumed my life. I, got on drugs and ruined my life, really. And I have these people to think that, I'm clean and I'm sober and I'm getting my life together.
And we all think you're making your mama proud, Kayla. So you keep it up, baby.
Thank you.
We're rooting for you. We're praying for you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Now, one of the most exciting outcomes you've had has been getting the elusive confession. It's incredible. And your team has been part of 4 confessions, including one where the killer even took law enforcement to the body.
Why did you not try to drive her to the hospital or something? I was afraid I was going to go back to jail.
How about those tears? Almost every final argument that I ever gave, I started off with people cry and cry for justice until they get it, and then they beg for mercy.
Well, I'm going to write that one down. That's a good one.
It's so true.
Now, the most surprising confession came from Clint Mackey, who admitted to murdering 19-year-old Erica Case. Now, before we get into that, let's take a look back at the case and see where it stands today. In the peaceful town of West Terre Haute, Indiana, 19-year-old Erica Case invited 2 boys over for a nighttime swim party. The next morning, Erica was found stabbed to death.
33 cuts to her body, absolutely brutal.
The teenage boys Erica had been with the night before became the main suspects in her murder. But they focused in on Clint Mackey, a new acquaintance with a history of violence towards women.
And slam me against the wall.
She had a handprint around her throat.
While evidence against Clint was mounting,
He realized he had blood on his hand.
and after talking to him face to face,
Did you ever see Erica like this? I'm thinking I'm looking directly in the eyes of a killer.
the Vigo County prosecuting attorney felt there was enough evidence and agreed to take the case against Clint to a grand jury. But before it could be presented, Clint Mackey walked into the Benton County, Iowa Sheriff's Office and told them everything he knew about the night of Erica Case's murder.
I walked in the house, I grabbed the knife, I walked right over and I killed her. And I didn't talk to her. I didn't ask any questions. I killed her.
What would motivate a criminal to confess? You would hope that there is a moral value somewhere inside of a person that says, you know, really, I know right from wrong. And can I live with myself or can I not live with myself?
Correct me if I heard you wrong, but you want her family to know what happened? Is that what you said? Or your family?
I want her family. I want everybody to know.
I was notified by Captain Moats late one evening. He called me on the phone.
He didn't give us any indication of fabricating.
It was just completely, almost unbelievable.
The process will be, we'll get appointed the attorney. They'll probably go ahead and set up for a pre-trial and a trial.
In our justice system, just because you confess to a crime, you still have the right to have a fair trial. So Right now, we're still in the beginning phases of the court process.
Since the episode originally aired, the case against Clint Mackey has started to move forward.
We came today for a further proceedings hearing for Clint Mackey.
A time frame for somebody being charged all the way through to sentencing, it's hard to predict. Sometimes it can go rather quick, depending on the willingness of the defendant. Sometimes it can go for months, if not years, so it makes it tough.
If he doesn't accept a plea bargain, is it going to go to trial?
Yes, it will go to trial. So now we're going through the process. Either one, he can take a plea bargain, or he can keep a plea as not guilty, go in front of a jury, have a trial, and then we'll see what the outcome is.
Kelly and Yolanda, I thank them very much. They told me not to give up, that it was a process and just be patient. And I said, I've been patient for 15 years at the time. I said, I think I can be patient a little longer. Clint being held accountable for what he does brings a lot of closure, because I didn't really have hope it would happen in my lifetime. My words to other families is don't give up hope and don't dwell on the past. Just look towards the future and think, yeah, I'm going to have justice.
Right now, I'd like to welcome homicide investigators Johnny Bonds and Steve Spingola. What did it take to get that guy to come in on his own? Was it the working him over in the car?
I remember looking in the rearview mirror when he's looking at that photograph, and I'm like, he's going to confess. I thought he was in the car. And I think if we could have kept him in the car a few more minutes, he probably would have that day.
When he saw that picture, you could see he just, physiologically broke down.
You all right? Look at that. How terrible is that? We want to find closure to this.
Are you sorry?
For what?
For this.
I didn't do this.
Even if you didn't do it.
His pulse rate started to go up. I could see the carotid artery in his neck. His eyes started to get watery. He looked down. He was close to breaking down right then and there.
You guys, here's another viewer. Ann Blanchard wrote in and said, Johnny and Steve, how do you decide how to approach a suspect? Whether you're the nice guy or you take the hard approach? Now, I would say you're both take the bad cop approach a lot.
How about bad and worse?
That's good.
I think I can do either one. I know in one case, I was going to be the good guy, and the other officer was going to be the bad guy. But this is somebody he'd been working with for years, and his animosity was so strong. Right. We went in there, and we had to reverse it. If he tried to push it the wrong way, it's going to fall apart.
But that's the experience you guys bring to this. Where does the case against Clint Mackey stand right now?
He has been charged. He is awaiting a decision on whether he wants to go to trial or take a plea. As you know, the prosecutors let the victim's family weigh in as to how much do you want to go to trial. Would you rather avoid a trial if possible with a little less time for a plea bargain? And they're in the middle of that process in Indiana.
I got to say, I loved it when the father said, I never gave up hope that we would get Erica's case solved. And it looks like you're right at the finish line.
I wish the mom had lived long enough to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. While Cold Justice has secured some amazing results in a very short period of time, it isn't just about putting criminals away. It's also about proving innocence. Take a look. On the morning of September 27th, 1997, 16-year-old Tiffany found her father, Charlie, and her stepmother, Kathy, bloodied and beaten to death. From the beginning, Tiffany was a suspect and the subject of rumors and gossip, and she's been haunted by it ever since.
I remember being confused. Do they not know me? Don't they know I couldn't do something like that, or know something and hide it and keep it?
The accusations had a devastating effect on Tiffany and her now husband, Brian.
I lost part of my family. I didn't know Samantha for years.
But when the investigators took a closer look at all the suspects in this case, it was Craig Hauser whose story didn't add up.
He said that someone had come from behind and just hit him a bunch of times.
Attacked from behind is the one detail of the scene that no one would know but the police.
And he emerged as the likely killer.
You are absolutely cleared in everybody's minds.
Oh, my gosh.
I just can't imagine being the suspect in the homicide of your own parents, but you're going to meet Tiffany and her sister Samantha when we come back. Welcome back to Justice Served. Now, we've been revisiting the devastating double homicide case of Charlie and Kathy Hayes. Because of the work of the Cold Justice team and the LaPorte Police Department, Craig Hauser was arrested on 2 counts of capital murder. And now, Charlie and Kathy's daughters, Tiffany Stanzik and Samantha Hayes, have joined us. I think everybody that knows this case knows that you were the primary suspect. You've got to tell the viewers what that's like. How did you grieve?
Behind closed doors. Just by myself with hugging a pillow and just crying.
And your husband said people turned their backs on you, but you married that guy, and you had 4 beautiful children. That had to help you.
He's my rock.
He's your rock.
He's my rock. He was there.
Samantha, I got to ask you. You were only a little girl when they separated you and you went to your grandmother. So how did you two get back together?
At 17, I left the house and I called her up and I said, you know, can I come stay with you? Like, what? And it just happened like that.
Went. And what did you think when this...
I opened my door. That was it. Here's my sister.
That's the kind of person you are.
That's it, yeah.
What happened the night of the show? You get calls? Give me the sequence.
So Samantha and I, we wanted to watch the show together. But Kathy's family was not ready to accept me or to see me yet. So our other 2 sisters with my mother, we all go to watch it together. Huddled up on the couch, you know, tears are flowing the entire time. As soon as the show is over, Samantha calls us. They want to see you.
Kathy's family.
Kathy's family. And so we drove about 20 minutes and just hugged the entire Threadgill family.
Like,
it was
amazing. Like,
people are crying and hugging me and telling me I'm so sorry. And I didn't want to hear sorry because I wasn't mad. I wasn't angry with them.
You're a very forgiving person. But you said something while we were doing this I'll never forget about a fundraiser.
I had volunteered for this certain booth, and I'm walking towards the booth, and Craig is coming at me. And he said, are you going to give me a hug, or do I have to beat you to death? And for years, it haunted me because I thought, you know you did this, and you're going to come up to me and say that to me. That is just creepy. How could you do that?
Well, if you think about forgiving him, you remember that.
Exactly. Thank you.
And that's
Thank
how
you,
I feel.
Mm-hmm. These people, the entire Cold Justice show, they are our angels. Our family angels.
Mm-hmm.
Without them, we would not be where we are today. We wouldn't be facing this trial.
We're thrilled that you came. I hope that this is a good experience for you. Thank you for your courage.
Thank you.
Where all of us are crying now, so let's reboot it. Okay. Now, while DNA did not play a factor in determining Charlie and Kathy Hayes' killer, it was the key in the case of 78-year-old Louise Kellum. On February 21st, 2005, Miss Louise Kellum, who was 78 years old, was found strangled to death.
To find her that way was very disturbing to me.
Forensic evidence played a big part in this investigation. DNA found on Miss Louise's body gave law enforcement what they needed to indict Marcus Hurd for murder.
You're going to be so great! I'll buy your drinks, I'll eat your throat, whatever you want.
Since the episode originally aired, there's been an update in the case.
Marcus is currently in prison now for 15 years for unrelated charges. However, these new charges are capital charges, capital murder, burglary, rape. Those charges will be brought forth at another date. He could get life without the possibility of parole. This is the 1999 cold case that we're working on. We have 4 or 5 cold cases currently that we are working on. I use those techniques that Yolanda and Kelly pretty much trained us on.
She doesn't take him out of the car.
She had groceries.
Okay.
She took her groceries in first. Yolanda and Kelly are real experts, and to be able to just absorb a lot of their knowledge was a great experience for me.
He might have told you something that's important. That's the only reason I'm asking you.
The training that they have invested in us sticks with you, and it makes you a better investigator.
Now, I heard Kelly saying that she was going to have to eat some crow after those DNA results came back in.
Oh, jeez. God, can I just tell you how good that felt? You know, that was a great moment. I jumped to the top of the hill, you know, feeling that great high for that moment. And then, of course, the next second, it's like, okay, let's go back to work now and finish doing what we have to do here.
Now, Yolanda, one of the viewers named Carol Jones asked this question. You started as a CSI before there was such a thing as DNA testing. What evidence was most important at that time to catch a killer?
But what people sometimes forget is fingerprints. Fingerprints, when I first started, were a huge thing. I mean, everything we did, you try to get fingerprints like they now rely on DNA. So they've kind of switched roles a little bit, although fingerprints are still something we always go after.
Wow. Now, Yolanda recently met with Cammie Green at Sorensen Labs, who's provided their resources to try and help Cold Justice solve decades-old murders.
Hi,
Oh my
Yolanda.
God, it's so good to see you finally. In my world as a CSI, I collect all the evidence and submit it for testing. Once it gets passed over to Cammie and the team at Sorensen Forensics, one of the most renowned DNA labs in the country, it goes through a detailed process before we get the results.
Sorensen Forensics is a forensic DNA testing laboratory. We're majority doing homicides and sexual assaults, so we do hundreds of homicides within a year. We get a lot of just the bulk evidence, whether it's clothing or bedding. So trying to find that stain is so key to the success of the DNA testing.
This is interesting.
Crime scene investigators are really the first responders. Our job is not necessarily to solve the crime. We really are like this assistant to the investigation. Here we've got a really weak blood stain, but it always has that little halo of a border. Once we've identified a biological stain or cellular material from an item of evidence, we will do our DNA analysis. The first step is extraction, where we are breaking open the cells to gain access to the DNA. And so the fact that the liquid's now turned that kind of reddish brown, that blood stain has lifted off of the sample itself. The second step is quantification, where we find out how much DNA we have to work with. The quantification will also help us decide whether or not we should continue on with testing.
If you don't have enough DNA.
Absolutely, and you're probably familiar.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. It's stopping.
Not quite getting enough DNA.
And if there is enough DNA present, we can make millions of copies of the DNA, which is detected on an instrument and analyzed to create a specific set of numbers that we can then compare to a buccal swab taken from a suspect.
So in our report, we said that we got a complete DNA profile off of the evidence. This is that set of numbers that makes up the DNA profile. This set of 16 numbers is actually unique to each individual. So the buccal swab from Marcus Hurd was collected and sent to us, and we obtained a DNA profile from him. And then we just do a side-by-side comparison of just numbers. That's when we found out that at every one of these locations, Marcus Hurd matched when we discovered that we had a match in the Camp Hill, Alabama case.
3 stains on her underwear, and they all come back to Marcus Hurd.
Oh, God. It was really one of those moments where you sit back and say, this is why we do what we do.
Really good trip. Very informational. Thank you. Kelly, you've expressed the very strong feelings about DNA testing in cold cases.
I just got off the phone with the crime lab.
Oh, man.
Nothing on our suspects.
It hurts.
Y'all perk up, man. In all these cold cases, how many times has DNA been the clincher? For me, never.
You know, we used to clear cases before there was DNA.
Exactly.
That's right.
When we come back, Kelly will lay out her opinion on DNA. Thanks for joining us on Cold Justice, Justice Served. Now, Yolanda, getting the DNA match for Marcus Hurd was amazing, but it's a rarity in cold cases. But it's a perfect example of why you always test for DNA.
Absolutely.
Well, I think what needs to be said is that back in the 90s, police departments and sheriff's offices all over the country got federal funding to go and retest all of their old cases, especially murders and sexual assaults, and they did. And all those cases with the slam dunk potential evidence have been taken care of and addressed. When we got the idea for this show and this concept, we went into it knowing DNA was not going to be the be-all and end-all of our cold cases because those easy ones have been taken care of. So what you're left with are these cases, the circumstantial evidence cases.
The really, really tough cases,
Yes,
actually.
yes.
And you and I talked about this, and I feel very strongly about this, is the portrayal of DNA evidence on TV shows like Law & Order and CSI, whose lead character was inspired by you, Yolanda. I know, and
it's her fault.
Don't get her started. I mean, you have no idea what
No, but I think the downside, you and I agree, is that there is a really unrealistic expectation from juries and from certain DAs who say to me, don't you have a smoking gun? Isn't the DNA totally convinced? It's
seriously, can we shout it from the rooftops? Stop focusing on DNA. This is the real world. We talk to witnesses, we follow the trail, we start from the beginning, we beat it down all over again, and we build it up piece by piece by piece. And those cases are beautiful, and they're truthful, and they're compelling, and they're justice.
You know, circumstantial evidence that we talked so much about played a big role in solving the murder of Vicki Hollingsworth Hollingsworth in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So let's take a look at that case. On May 29, 1999, the remains of Vicki Carr Hollingsworth were discovered in a remote location outside Chattanooga, Tennessee, called Billy Goat Hill. Vicki had gone missing 2 years prior, and her parents and children were certain her ex-husband LeBron had something to do with her disappearance. In order to prove LeBron's involvement, the Chattanooga district attorney asked investigators to work on a few specific things, most importantly, concealment.
If we can show that LeBron was the one to conceal Vicki's body on Billy Goat Hill, he could still be charged. That's very important.
After visiting LeBron's former home with Vicki's impassioned brother,
I was so hysterical at that time. I knew I had to find my sister.
They mapped the route from one suspected crime scene to the next. And when one of his exes mentioned Billy Goat Hill as a location frequented by LeBron,
he drove me up to Billy Goat Hill.
His fate was sealed and he was arrested for Vicki's murder.
That's the best news I've heard in years.
I appreciate you so much. It's been a process. I think she's smiling right now. I think she's smiling.
After the episode aired, Vicki's son Wesley made some big changes in his life.
When Cold Justice got involved, this all my mom's case, it was very hard opening up a wound after 16 years, of the unknown. But I feel a lot better now knowing that the person who did this to my mom is in custody. The reason we are having this meeting today is so we can move forward with stuff as it relates to the Victoria Carr Foundation. The inspiration of the Victoria W. Carr Foundation for Abused and Battered Women comes from, of course, my mom. I want to talk to younger kids to let them know that, abuse is very real. And as a child, I had to deal with it. I didn't know how to say stuff because, I was just being obedient.
With the grant writing, I'm going to be able to really get our programs out there and get the funding in that we need.
All right. I'm going to do something positive. I'm going to make sure that people know my mother's name and know her name in a positive light.
This is the Lady Victoria. From what he's been telling me about his mom, when you're seeing her, she lit up a room.
I also have another portion of the foundation, which is called Victoria Couture, which is a high-fashion, elegant couture gown and dress line. My mom was a fashionista.
Those evening gowns, if they are sold, proceeds from that go back into the foundation.
My message is stand strong, persevere, keep pushing, don't give up, don't give in.
Right now, I want to welcome back Steve Spingola and introduce LAPD Homicide Detective Orlando Martinez. Guys did a hell of a job on this case. But first, I want to ask you about the psychology of abuse. How was this guy able to manipulate these beautiful, smart women?
Unfortunately, it's a common thing called the cycle of abuse, cycle of violence. And you'll have the blow up, the incident where there'll be fear and intimidation and yelling. And then right after, whoever's being abusive will beg for forgiveness. I'll never do it again. I love you. Flowers, chocolates. So it keeps repeating itself. And unfortunately, the victim starts blaming themselves.
And let me ask you this, Steve. Why does so much domestic abuse go unreported?
I think a lot of these women are just vulnerable financially, socially. And then again, there's always that fear that you're going to wind up with a LeBron who's going to stalk you and kill you.
Now, one of the good things of your involvement here was the DA took it from second-degree murder to first-degree murder. How did you work that out?
Neil Pinkston is the kind of DA that every county and every state in this country needs. He's fired up about circumstantial evidence cases. He's in tune to the details. He's all about the victim. And he got LeBron indicted the very next day.
Let me ask you about an update on where LeBron's case stands.
I can say that in Chattanooga, Tennessee, they move things along a whole lot quicker than a lot of other places. And there's a good chance that his case might be set for trial or disposed of otherwise sometime later on this very year, which honestly is really, really fast.
Oh, we're glad to hear that. Now, everybody was thrilled with that case when it was solved. But when we come back, we'll update you on the race to find a killer still on the loose. Now, I've got to say, one of the most disturbing cases featured in the series was the murder of single mother Marianne Holmes in front of her 2 young daughters. Original investigators had hundreds of suspects in the case. And after working with the Cold Justice team, they honed in on a few. But still the question remained, could an unknown person have committed this heinous crime? On the morning of July 9th, 1995, 4-year-old Ashley Holmes ran into her neighbor's house naked and with her hands bound with rope. Her mother, Mary Ann Holmes, had been tortured and murdered in front of her and her younger sister at their home in Thatcher, Arizona.
I've seen hundreds of murder cases, and this is the kind of crime that gives you chills.
Despite being a small town, there were hundreds of suspects in the case, since Mary Ann had had a garage sale the morning of her murder. To crack the case, law enforcement focused in on some of the suspicious men in Mary Ann's life. A violent ex-boyfriend, an acquaintance who was obsessed with Mary Ann in the months before her death, and a man who became rather infatuated with her after the murder. In the end, investigators honed in on Philip Turley, but with his bipolar disorder seeming to explain some of his strange behavior.
Some things I don't have answers for.
And the fact that an unknown passerby also could have committed the crime, they were unable to find enough evidence to point to one specific killer, and the case remained unsolved.
Ashley, unfortunately, this week we were not able to find enough evidence to tell anybody for sure who killed your mom.
Tough case. Homicide investigator Alan Brown's joining us. Alan, you've interviewed a lot of people on this case, and a lot of them were either seriously deranged or difficult. Tell me your approach to that kind of a suspect.
Good word, deranged. You already know that's the type of person you're looking for. So you're going to have to handle the interviews totally different because they're expecting to be interviewed, and I think they enjoy it, and they're ready for it.
This was also the tough crime scene because you couldn't get to the crime scene, right?
You know, the reason why you take photos, you do diagrams, is because someday you want a jury to be able to see what you saw when you were there. And when you have something like this cold case and you don't have that opportunity to do that, doing a mock crime scene is the second best thing. They wouldn't see anything until their intruder is literally in the doorway from the kitchen into the living room.
Well, I got to say that viewers of the show were particularly touched by the dedication of Mary Ann's daughter, Ashley, to the mother who she lost at such a very young age.
How much do you remember?
I remember the next morning really well.
Okay.
And I remember before it happened pretty well. But
kind of
a black hole.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Sorry under these tough circumstances. So I have got to say that I have great respect for your courage.
Thank you.
I guess every viewer wants to know how you're doing.
I have really good days and I have really bad days, but I think that that's part of grieving. Since the show, I started going to counseling, which I really had never done. So I'm doing better. I never say I'm good, but I'm doing better.
Kelly talked about, the first thing she mentioned to me was how caring you are, how you're always worrying about everybody but yourself.
Well, she wants to think of herself as tough and a scrapper and a fighter because her mom was. Her mom was like Miss Independence. And I think that this is a walking, breathing example of her mom.
And I love that, though. I mean, anytime anyone tells me that I look like my mom or I'm acting like her, I'm doing something like her, it's the most amazing feeling in the world.
There are hundreds of thousands of crime victims in America. What would you say to those victims?
You have to keep going. You have to keep getting up every day, and you have to just keep living your life. And I know for me, one of the biggest revelations I've had this year is that I have to live my life for my mom. I have to do everything that I think she was going to do, and I think I had to learn to accept love in my life, and I had to learn to just accept the good things and not feel like I didn't deserve it just because my mom didn't get it.
Yeah, I know you guys are moms, and this case means a lot to you guys, doesn't it?
What do you say? There aren't very many cases like this. There aren't very many sick monsters like the person who killed Mary Ann, and there aren't very many victims like her.
I think the toughest thing for this crew is they don't take no for an answer. You're never giving up on this case, are you?
Well, Kendall Curtis and Terry Johnson, I guarantee you, they're looking at this case every day. They're never going to give up. They adore her and her sister. And, you want to hope that one day some lead, some tip, something will come up, and she'll get those answers that she deserves.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
God bless you. Now, this case was incredibly disturbing, and the Cold Justice team is passionate about getting it solved. somebody knows something about this case. I learned that on America's Most Wanted. You helped me capture more than 1,400 criminals over 25 years. So we really need your help to find this killer. If you know anything about the murder of Mary Ann Holmes, then please contact National Crime Stoppers Hotline. Now, what you viewers love about the show is the inside look at what it's really like to be a criminal investigator. So let's take a look.
I'm hoping that downpour doesn't follow us to where we're going and wash us out.
No, I want to see you looking like a wet rat.
It's been my experience over years that the ex-girlfriends, ex-wives of murder suspects are great in bed. You ever messed with one of them? Got you, didn't I?
Look at all the hound dogs.
This is a puppy farm.
I'm going on a venture to say that inside this house ain't gonna smell good.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Oh, look at the deer. See it?
I missed it.
Yeah.
I wish you would have hit it. That would have been cool.
Stop!
It ran between the cars.
What do you mean you wish they would have hit it?
Well, it would have been an adventure.
Oh, my God.
Close to the house because you might be leaving soon.
DPS trooper there, son of a bitch.
No, you got to be kidding.
Good morning, trooper. How are you, sir?
You got driver's license?
Yes, sir. But explain something.
92 miles an hour.
Yeah, we're trying to catch that truck.
Oh, my God. Who can believe this?
We decided since Beverly has this thing for hot, young Hispanic males, we'd offer a carry it out there and see what happens.
Is that me?
Yeah.
Jenny was saying you wanted to go to that shoe store called Heels on Heels or something like that. See Johnny in some pink heels, huh? Little spandex, little perfume.
Boy, y'all been gone a long time.
I don't know if y'all ready for this.
What?
Old man confessed.
No way.
He's sick and said it's been bothering him for 30 years.
Are you serious?
He admitted he did it?
Gotcha.
That's just wrong.
Kelly, your last job was locking people up for doing bad things, and you and a cop get pulled over for speeding.
Yeah, but you know who pulled us over? A boy I was in second grade with who used to eat colors, and we all beat him up. That's who the cop was.
Did he recognize you?
Yeah, he sure did. Hey, Kelly, how's it going?
Did he have a crush on you back in the day?
They all did.
Orlando, I got to ask you, you're kind of the rookie on this squad here. How is it working with these old pros? And I don't mean old in age, I mean old in
Yes, you do.
Well, I'm old, but I can get away with that. But some of you guys have been doing it since you were very, very, very young.
I went homicide in 72, so I've been doing it for 42 years.
42 years.
I don't have the energy I used to have.
He has the appetite.
So before we go, I want to thank you all again for sharing your insights and how you work these cold cases. Let's take a look at some of the upcoming cases that this team will dive into, hoping to find truth, hoping to find justice. Thanks for watching tonight. Please be safe. Coming up this season on Cold Justice.
Do you think he just threw her or he didn't walk down there and place her?
No, he threw her.
The team helps investigate the disappearance of a young mother.
They're fighting. The first thing she does...
She's trying to make him let go. He didn't have to cover her. He didn't have to dig a hole. He didn't have to do anything but just take her lifeless body, walk over to the side of a cliff, and let her go.
The team travels to Ohio to uncover the truth behind the murder of a pregnant teen.
3 men hunting happened upon skeletal remains.
A female body has been discovered.
Robin never come to me and say, you're the father. She couldn't.
He goes, well, you're lucky I don't do to you what I done to that other girl.
They'll also examine the case of a woman bludgeoned with a mysterious weapon.
Say I am striking you.
There was a nightstick he had in the car.
This was just so brutal that it actually severs part of her ear.
And they'll try to determine if one death was an accident or murder.
He claims death by electrocution in a bathtub.
Why is he holding her down like this?
Keep watching Cold Justice.